Hi, welcome to the Reclaim Your Real Self podcast with Jennifer Van Heswick. I'm your host, Jennifer Van Heswick, and I'm so excited to be here. And I'm so excited as well as honored that you're here too. This week, I wanted to talk about what actually happened to me in the recording time last week and how this can support you so that you don't have to get stuck in it the way I have in the past. And I'm sure the way you have in your life as well, which is when contrast starts to show up. So, one of my goals in the last, many months, but really specifically in the last couple of weeks, has been how do I stay as present in my presence, in my knowing, connected to my spirit self, my essence, as much as possible within my daily life. I mean, that's the embodiment of the spirit in human form. And if you're attracted to me and the messages and the teachings that I do, you're probably a very highly sensitive, intuitive, awake, aware woman who wants more, who wants to embody as much of her real self as possible into her human experience so that her everyday life experience gets to be as free as possible, as sovereign as possible, as joy filled as possible, because we literally came here it's a birthright to have this joy that we dream of. We know there's more possible, but because we are these highly sensitive women, so much comes at us at all times, and we're intuitive and we're so connected that we're taking it all in. And sometimes it's so hard to determine what's ours and what's not ours. And so I will go through lots of waves of this, and I have in the past. And for many years, I didn't even recognize that I was depressed. I wouldn't have used the word depressed at the time because it was much more subtler. I'd have a really good week. And then I'm raising four little kids. I'd have a really good week. And then I'd have like a really off week where I had to force myself to do anything, to get out of bed, to find joy. I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't awake at that time. I knew that there must be more. I didn't understand. I felt so guilty because I had this amazing husband and these healthy, relatively happy children. I mean, they had their little nuances of health. They were healthy. I had this amazing extended family, and I was sad. I felt like there was this missing piece going on that I didn't know what it was, how to grasp it, what it looked like. And so I would just constantly go into these I mean, I always had a smile on my face. People wouldn't know this of me. I was reactive though. I had a lot of anger. I just knew there was more, but I didn't know how to get there. And then um, I started to dive deeper into this concept of what it looked like to, you know, the law of attraction. And I was always curious about space, and I loved Star Trek and anything that had to do with, otherworldly stuff and that always fascinated me. So I'm bipping along, raising these four kids. I had four kids, 5 and under, and it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot. I was young, naive, potentially uneducated and, well, pretty much uneducated and all this stuff. But I knew I had this knowing that there was more. And so that in and out lasted like literally decades. And I'm still, because the sensitivities, the feelings, like oh, there's an issue with my husband, I'm taking it on. There's an issue with my mom, I'm taking it on. My kids are struggling, I'm taking it on. And I didn't know where I started and where I ended because of the intuitive, sensitive part of me that I didn't even know how to label at the time. I didn't know that wasn't what everyone else was like. But as I've evolved and I've gone through my awakening journey, which I actually had someone ask me if I could tell about what my awakening journey has looked like. So I'm going to do that in another podcast soon. But this one, I really want to talk about what contrasts look like. So I was constantly in this contrast state, find a little joy, oh my gosh, like this depressed state, and overwhelm and anger that was coming out in my dreams wasn't really coming out so much in my reality, but I was like having all these dreams of how angry I was, or people weren't liking me, or they were angry at me. And there was just, it was trying to bubble through. So there was all this contrast occurring. And, I blipped along, and now I'm here. I'm decades later. My oldest is 26, my youngest twins are 20. And I've been doing this awakening work for a very long time now. I really woke up when I really started awakening and being shown how much support there is externally, in terms of like ethereally, I guess. That's internally too, but I was being shown that all of these things were real. And that was when my dad passed, and that was over 20 years ago now. So I've been doing this journey for a really long time, and this awakening journey, this being aware, being conscious, understanding what it's all about. And I love it. Like, I want to dive deep and hard and long into it. That sounded really good. But yeah, like I want to go down rabbit holes, and I do. And I want the nuances of things. So I've used my own life as this experiment, I guess, in what does it look like to awaken as this normal, awaken, but also embody all of that knowing that we know, like all of that, this consciousness and spirituality. Like, how do we embody the inner growth, the truth of who we really are in this human experience, having this normal, everyday, middle class life. I was a stay-at-home mom. I I still have life. I still have most of my kids at home living with me, and I have a husband. We have businesses, and we're building a house, and there's just so much going on in life. And I didn't run away to the top of a mountain to sit myself in a meditation state of humming to find myself. I found myself in the nitty gritty, real, everyday experience of life. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about that. I would absolutely love to be able to do that. And one day I probably will. But right here, right now, I had to awaken and embody more of my real self as much as possible through all of the experiences that life was giving me in this real experience, which is pretty much probably you too, and most everybody. And, coming from humble beginnings and loving parents, and contrast that constantly happened between me and my brother, that was so angst, and then moving that in and watching it reflect in my life in other ways, and then looking at what does it look like to be me, to honor me, to feel like I was worthy, to know I had a voice, to do the inner work, the deep inner work that isn't spiritual bypassing, isn't just like, oh, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this activation or this meditation and everything's going to be okay, because that's not how it works. Maybe eventually, I dream eventually that will be so much easier for us as humanity. But right now we are in this, 3D physical dense reality, and we're the spirit that was forgotten. I've said this in my other podcasts. I will continue to say it. These are activations and rememberings helping you realize how amazing you are. Like, the power that you have. And I'm asking, and I'm for myself, but I'm also asking for you, this remembrance of the truth of who you really are, and integrating that truth within this human body that you reside within, and it loves and supports you at all times. And then the universe brings to you all of these seemingly contrasting experiences to show you where you're out of alignment with the truth of who you really are. And what does that mean? I know there are a lot of words and they sound woo-woo-y and stuff, and we'll get to that more over different podcasts and stuff like that. But I mean, essentially at the ground level, the truth of who you really are is spirit. your unique essence, spirit in human form. You came here, you forgot that, and you're having this human experience, and you're here to awaken to that knowing. And then taking all of that energy that is the power of you, that fullness, that real self part of you, your spirit, your soul, and bringing that into the human body. So you're not like burning up the body with this big, giant, bright light that you are. And having that part of you emanate through, and having your ego mind and the fears and the doubts and the judgments step aside to allow you to, your frequency to raise, to lighten, to brighten, to be able to live this experience and create it deliberately. Choose to create it, because that's how powerful you are. So back to the story of last week, when the contrast started to occur, what I did was so human of me, is that I just didn't stay aligned in my knowing as much as I know I want to, in order to thrive and have this most amazing free life. And I have watched my life morph over the decades as I've awakened. And it's, I've had dark nights of the soul, many. I've had, I fall down, broken apart moments about 4 years ago in my life where, like, literally, like, I couldn't, and there's still stuff there. Like, I've done so much work on it, but I couldn't function because all of my asking was so deep and so grand that what was being brought up to the surface was so much nuanced to be able to support me. How do I explain this? My asking to embody my spirit in human form was getting to the point where I'd done so much of the inner growth that all of those things that I was still out of alignment with, that was still not in coherence to my well-being, all of the ways that I was letting my own self down unconsciously, needed to come up to be seen. And I went into I had severe panic and anxiety attack. I didn't sleep for 3 months. There was all of these things, which I will go more deeper into in this awakening story that I will do a podcast on. But there were all these things that were occurring, and I'm going to full-fledged back to the story of last week. It was the judgment of the experiences that caused the pain. And so I know this one's a little bit harder for people to understand, but it's like everything is our perception of our reality. It's how we see it. It's what we choose to look through the lens with. So just like the breakdown 4-ish years ago, which I would call a breakthrough, and I would never wish on anyone, but it is made me who I am today, and I'm so grateful for that. But it's the contrast. I mean, I have this conversation with my eldest daughter, Erica, and she has this dream, and I have it too. And she always asks this question of, like, why does it need to be so contrasty? Why do we need to have hard in order to find ourselves? And I'm like, we don't need to. We don't need to have it. It's just that we're not listening, and we're so stuck in the busyness of life and the humanness of life. Excuse me. As well as we've never been taught, really. I mean, these conversations could not really happen. They certainly couldn't happen on a podcast like this, even probably, 5+ years ago. It was, I didn't even know I've been doing this awakening work, and I graduated with my awakening coaching, one of my certifications, like well over a decade ago, probably 15 years ago. Yeah, far longer than that, like back in 2010. And I didn't know how to use the word awakening. Nobody understood what that was. Nobody knew. I had to explain it, and it was just so out there, and I was judging it as much as I believe other people were judging it, because I was judging that I was going to be judged, and I was so worried about it. So the contrast, this is what I really want to talk about. So the contrast occurs, and Erica asks, why does the contrast have to occur? And I said, well, it's to get our attention, and it doesn't have to occur. And there will be a time in this human evolution that we have that it doesn't need to occur, and it just gets to get better and better and better as humanity evolves. That's going to occur, and it's going to occur on a wholeness at some point, but we get to have that occur now individually. And the more that we do the work individually, the more that that gets to happen holistically throughout humanity. So the work we do on ourselves supports the whole, and that's why our life just gets to get better and better. And that's what I've seen in my life, especially since the breakthrough is that this life gets to morph like reality, like the law of attraction gets to morph more and more as we are deliberately choosing what we want in our lives. And I am deliberately choosing more freedom, more embodiment, more alignment, more joy, more passion, more connection, more love, more compassion, more everything in my life. That's what I want. I know because my worth, as I was talking in the last podcast, is not even up for debate. I was born to have this joy filled life, and so are you. And so, with that truth right there, I get to say, now, what do I want? I get to choose. And last week, I sat in the contrast because I didn't stay as present as I want to be. And I've been asking, my ask lately has been, how do I stay in my presence as much as possible throughout my day? Whether that be every hour I have an alarm and it goes off and I say, okay, Jen, breathe. Remember, you don't get stuck into like the weeds and the nuances of what life is presenting, and just breathe and connect. And my goal was to do that every hour, and I didn't even close to get there, and I'm going to be. But life then came and showed me where what happens again to remind me, so that I get to decide, and then I get to redecide, and then I get to choose, do I want this? And no, I don't. I don't want the contrast. And I also don't want the judgment of the contrast, because it's in the judgment of life that causes the pain. It's the suffering. So this could happen and you could see it one way and someone else could see it another way. And to you, it's bad. And to that other person, it's good. And then we're talking dualistic now, but it's in that perception of it. But I'm always looking now and saying, okay, even if I forgot for a minute or an hour or a day or a week, what did that get to show me? Because life is always happening for me. And with that realization and that knowing and that remembering and the embodiment of that, that life is always happening for me, that I'm always loved, I'm always supported, I'm always being shown through myself, my higher perspective, and through the whole entire universe of love and light. I'm always being guided to my next becoming and remembering of the truth of who I am. So I get to fully, completely, utterly live from that soul spirit self in this human experience. That is magic when it just starts to ebb and flow and come into your real life. And so let this be an activation for you, because that's what it is, of this knowing that we just get to get better and better and better and more fun, or whatever we want, or whatever you get to choose. I talked about in the first podcast about, or I think the second podcast, actually, sorry, about life being easier and easier. And I just want to keep bringing that remembrance in, that we get to choose that ease, grace, and flow. Life gets to be this way. I get to have optimal health, well-being, and homeostasis on all levels. I choose this. And so with that being said, I was in this, you know, life. I was doing finances and budgeting and things that I knew I didn't want to do, but now I was being inspired to do it. But in the inspiration, I was even seeing how I get stuck in it. Oh, I spent this much money. I should have, excuse me, I should have done this. Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, there's fear over here. Instead of being so grateful that I'm looking at these numbers and thinking each time I made a purchase, each time I bought something or I was given something, in looking at the numbers, that I'm grateful. and thankful and acknowledging it, because the more we do that, the more life comes back at us and gives us more of that beautiful acknowledgement and great gratitude and awareness. So I didn't fall deep by any means. I just didn't really like, I just didn't, I didn't catch myself as fast as I normally do. And I was all good, and I didn't get depressed, and I didn't have anxiety, and I didn't have overwhelm. So those are all things that are just like, whoa, ho, that's amazing, because look what it did to me before. Because my perception and my habit and my knowing has changed so drastically that I don't go that deep, that far, that fast. And the contrast is still there, and my perception of it changes, and I'm like, thank you so much for showing me, what did I just learn from that? What did I get to get out of that? What do I get to see, choose, and decide again, or let go of? All of those scenarios which I looked at, and I'm like, okay, thank you. I get to see where I'm not being as compassionate as I want to be. And I know I'm an extremely compassionate person, but I also got to see the nuances of what that looked like. Oh, thank you. I wasn't being present. I didn't journal the way I choose to journal because that gets me into my presence more. I said yes to that person over there when I really wanted to say no and I didn't. So there's all these nuances involved. And because the asking and your asking too is so strong, it's going to show you. So as it shows you, because so much of is happening in the world right now, there's so many things falling apart and systems changing, and new consciousness energies coming in, and we need to know how to find our stability. We need to understand how to still be completely aware and present while all this seeming angst around us is occurring. I mean, we went to a meeting last week about them, how they raised our taxes so much and what, was happening in our region. And it brought me and my husband down, and I was able to raise it back up really fast, but I could feel the fear and the frustration of the energy of the people in the room and everything else within my husband and myself looming up. And I don't choose to be in that kind of fear anymore. So I had to consciously catch myself, but it took a little bit longer than it normally does these days. So with that being said, there's all these techniques and tools we can use to catch ourselves, but really it's practice. It's practice of looking at something and saying, okay, this is just information. It's data coming in. And if I choose to receive it and put a meaning toward it, I've turned that knowledge, that feeling, into an emotion, and an emotion equals judgment. And the moment we judge something, the moment is when that's the moment we bring in the density that goes along with it, that causes so much disease and distress and discomfort. So we can have a feeling, we can have a thought, we can see experiences coming through us, but if we grab onto it and make it mean something, that causes the discourse in our body. That lodges inside of our body in some way until we make a decision to let go of it. So I did. And this morning, I went into this beautiful, beautiful meditation activation guided for me. And I hadn't done that for a little bit. And I'm like, oh my God, Jen, it's so simple. You know exactly what puts you into these spaces. And I want you to find those for you. For me, I've said it before: water, hot tub, pool, meditations, activations, journaling, laughing, giggling, breathing, all of these things for me, that's what it is. Helping support people like you doing this kind of work. It builds me up. It makes me joyful and thriving. For you, what does it look like for you? Remember that. Bring yourself back as much as possible when you're in those states of, oh my God, this is falling apart, or this is happening, or I feel this way about myself. And pull back, breathe, and have those tools, those things that you know work for you, and go do them. And so my goal moving forward, which has been the same goal in the last couple of weeks, is how do I get to remind myself that almost moment to moment instead of day to day or week to week. And so that got to bring that back into such clarity for me, as like, this is what it looks like when you don't. And this is what it looks like when your perception is off. And this is what it looks like when when life is trying to, my higher perspective me is trying to get my attention and say, Jennifer, this isn't in alignment with the truth of who you really are. Jennifer, that's just fear based. Jennifer, you're getting sucked in. Stop. Jennifer, you want this. Jennifer, you choose this. Jennifer, you declare this. So you declare that. You choose that. You decide what you want. You put it out into the universe. You declare it for yourself. Watch what comes back with you. And what comes back, whether you judge it good or bad, is still information. And it's how you perceive it. So I hope that helped. We can dive deeper into this stuff more. Things will come up through different conversations, same ideas, different ways to speak them. And it's all beautiful and it's all aligned and it's all in perfect timing. And I'm so honored to be here with you. I'm so honored that you're here with me. And I'm so excited to keep these conversations going. If you have any type of comments or discussions you want to have, please leave them in the comments below wherever you're watching this or listening to this. And I would love to invite you into my Women's Wisdom Circle, which is called Lavender. And she was utterly, amazingly downloaded. And she should be running now by the time this podcast is going, but I'm just launching her first. And it's for aware, sensitive, intuitive women awake who know so much and want to have support to be weekly guided, have their questions answered, to be seen, to be safe, to feel heard, to feel acknowledged, to work on their sensitivities and what does that look like, being this sensitive, intuitive person, feeling everything, knowing all the energy and everything that's shifting on the planet right now. How do we raise the collective up together? There's all of these different things. And I would just really, really, really love if you feel the call at any point to come join or try out Lavender. I'll link the information below. And I'm so honored to be here with you. Have the best day ever and just go have a magical life.